Bom dia a todos. Meu nome é Josué, eu vou fazer a apresentação do nosso palestrante dessa manhã, que é uma pessoa bastante conhecida nacionalmente e internacionalmente, mas como tem uma população bastante jovem hoje aqui, acho que vale a pena a gente detalhar um pouco mais. Dr. Mauro Schechter é graduado em Medicina pela Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, tem mestrado e doutorado em Medicina Tropical na Universidade de Londres, foi pesquisador associado da Rockefeller University, New York, e professor assistente da New York University. Atualmente, o professor Mauro é titular da Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, professor associado da Johns Hopkins, é um dos pesquisadores que mais publica, que tem mais citações no Brasil, e também colabora em vários consensos nacionais e internacionais, incluindo a Organização Mundial da Saúde, o Ministério da Saúde, né? Hoje, para nós, o Dr. Mauro vai falar sobre When to Start, Revisiting, Start, Same-Day Initiation and Treatment as Prevention. Obrigado, Mauro.
Bom dia a todos. Eu queria agradecer ao ESPER, e não é por opção, mas para pedido do ESPER, por causa dos visitantes estrangeiros, eu vou falar inglês, me permitem, me perdoem. So, Alan, Mike, I'm going to speak in English because Esper asked me. So the talk is going to be in English so you can understand. I hope you can understand what I'm going to say. Okay, so these are my disclosures. This is very important before we begin. So, because people sometimes don't understand what I'm saying about this. So all HIV-infected individuals have the right to be treated. All HIV-infected individuals eventually will need treatment, with a possible exception of some people also that can control their viremia forever and don't have any signs of inflammation. These people might not need treatment, although Mike thinks they probably need treatment as well. That's very important. The risk of progression in untreated asymptomatic individuals is not uniform, and the probability of onward transmission is inversely proportional of the plasma viral load. So if you're undetectable, you don't transmit. The so-called U equals U. So the first HIV/AIDS case reported in 1981, when there were a cluster of cases of KS Kaposi sarcoma and pneumocystis carinii, one in New York, the other in San Francisco. And soon after, they realized they're not isolated cases, they're sort of outbreaks. And if you look here, there seem to be lots of cases, if I can, I don't know where the pointer is, but if you look here, it looks like lots of cases, but only here, when there's a cluster in January, there's only 16 cases. That's not a lot. But then they're trying to find out what was the cause. If you look here, in good journals like The Lancet, they thought it was amyl nitrate, which is a drug, that poppers that people used to go in parties. Or in The Lancet, or in the JAMA, they thought was too much exposure to semen in the anal mucosa. And then in 83, 84, the virus was discovered. And I put this picture here because I think it's a testament to the work of numerous people. On the left, you have here Bob Gallo and Françoise Barré-Sinoussi. Here you have the CDC folks. But here I think the importance of those of us who are clinicians, people not very often recognize Willy Rosenbaum. He's a clinician, a French clinician, a young French clinician at that time, and he still looks young now, who realized that the gay man who had not the disease had glands, swollen glands. And he thought, well, maybe these guys are the ones who are going to develop the disease. So maybe the virus is there. And it's from the gland of the virus, or one of these homosexual men, that Françoise Barré-Sinoussi isolated HIV. So look, being a good clinician can lead to great things. And then this guy, those of you who are young might not know, is called Rock Hudson. He was a very famous actor. And obviously at that time did not say he was gay. And all of a sudden, he realized he was dying of that disease and had to say he was gay. And that was a shock for everyone at that time. And then treatment, soon after, you had AZT in 1987. And then there's many drugs, as you can see here. This from 2014. And since then, in the last 4 or 5 years, still had many other drugs. I think 4 or 5 new drugs and drug combinations that became available. And these covers of important magazines like Time and Science and The Economist show the history of HIV/AIDS from something that everyone dies to someone thinking in 2011 the end of AIDS. That's going to end. And over the years, there's a slide I like very much that Marco Vittoria, who's a Brazilian that WHO made out of an editorial I wrote for the Journal of Infectious Diseases in 2004. Treatment went to start is coming back and forth, earlier, later, depending on knowledge and new drugs. And here you can see, if you look at the guidelines, they have changed a lot from the ISUSA, the Health Service in the US, European, and WHO at the beginning here. Europeans started late to have guidelines, WHO as well. I had the honor of being part of these guidelines, the International AIDS Society USA from 2000 to 2006. The WHO, the first guidelines, or three first guidelines, I was one of the persons who wrote them. And then 4 or 5 years ago, the WHO launched, or the UNAIDS in fact, launched 1990, I believe most of you heard about it, which was supposed if you treat it, 90% of people with HIV knew they were infected, 90% of these were on treatment, and 90% of those on treatment were undetectable. They claimed would be the end of the epidemic. That was the idea. Because of that, WHO had its guidelines on how to treat people, and the guidelines recommended that we should start antiretroviral therapy the same day people are diagnosed. Everyone, all age groups, the moment you diagnose someone with HIV, that's what you should do, treat everyone. And this was largely based on a paper called the START trial, which that's the conclusion of the START trial, that found significant benefit of immediate initiation regardless of CD4 count. And that's the basis of my talk. And a disclaimer that I'm one of the authors of this paper, and this word regardless took several phone teleconferences, we are 19 authors, and I spent hours on end get this word into the paper, regardless. And that's a key word, and that's the basis of the whole talk, is that regardless. So why should we treat anyone? One is for individual benefit that person. The other one is for society, because if you treat someone, that person will not transmit. So it'll be benefiting the whole society or the person's partner or partners. So individual benefit. If you look almost 10 years ago, that's in the UK, United Kingdom, lots of people, of which the vast majority started antiretroviral therapy at what we'd consider late, with 350 CD4, so advanced immune deficiency. At that time, if you started therapy at the age of 35 and were capable of maintaining an undetectable viral load, your life expectancy was as good as someone without HIV, no matter if you were a woman, man, or woman. If you were in Denmark, the same thing. If you're able to maintain an undetectable viral load, your life expectancy, if you're 25, in the case of Denmark, your life expectancy is exactly the same as someone HIV uninfected. If you're not able to maintain an undetectable viral load, the prospects were bleak. But life expectancy, if you're able to maintain it, very good. So, even 10 years ago, with olden drugs, not the good drugs we have now, starting with 350, below 350, patients who maintain an undetectable viral load had a normal life expectancy. So, can we do better than normal life expectancy? So, we thought we could. So that's what we did with the START trial. The START trial was a very large trial, which you can see here, almost 4,700 participants in 2 groups, one called immediate. So after someone is randomized, that group, the person starts treatment. Everyone had a CD4 count above 500, everyone asymptomatic. The other one would wait till the CD4 got to 350. One should note that of the group, 37% had CD4 counts above 700, so high CD4 counts for over a third of the participants. And 25% had viral load below 3,000. So that's how it happened. And one very important thing, this was not an intention to treat analysis. This was on treatment. So the analysis of people who stayed on trial. So the analysis was who started treatment and stayed in the trial. So everyone was undetectable. So it shows the best result. We knew whoever stays undetectable will do well. We knew that. So this trial was supposed to last for several years, but was interrupted because there's a big difference between those who started immediately, those who deferred their treatment. Big difference, and stopped. And one can see here that's big. But if you look more carefully, you'll still look, well, but it's not 100, that's 10%. We're talking 4 versus 2. If you look more carefully, we're talking 42 events versus 96. Remember, it's 2,700 per arm. So here in the immediate arm, 2,600, nothing happened to them. In the deferred arm, 2,600 to 650, here versus the 600. So for 50, the difference only mattered for 50 persons, in fact. But if you look in more detail, for serious non-AIDS events, there's no difference. For serious AIDS events, then there was a difference between the two groups. 14 versus 50. Big difference. But when you look, what are the differences? The real differences. There are TB and Kaposi's. Those are the differences. But TB in Africa, only in Africa. Kaposi's for gay men in the US. So if you're not in Africa, this I forgot to show the map. The trial was conducted in 35 countries all over the world, including in Brazil. Brazil had 600 persons, 650 persons. So if you're not in Africa, or you're not a gay man in the US, they make a difference. In Brazil, I had 600 and something, there's no difference. If you look at deaths, 12 versus 21, you say, well, starting a bit later was bad for your health, although there's no statistical difference, but if you look at the cause of death, there are 9 deaths in difference. Of the 9, 6, 2 here the difference because of suicide. 2 here because substance abuse. 4 because other causes, non-related to HIV, nothing. So renal failure, in fact, diabetes. So 10 out of 9 were unrelated to treatment or to HIV. So the conclusion of the trial, and I quote here, combination drug therapy should be recommended for all HIV-positive persons, regardless of CD4 count. Not all persons, but regardless. So what does it mean? It means, in fact, it's not for all. It's that it's regardless. That CD4 count is not what you should use as the parameter to indicate treatment. And why is that? This is the reason. If you divide people by when at randomization, the age, if you were over 50, your likelihood of progressing is 12% versus 3% if you treat. Big difference. But if you're under 30, it's 2.6 versus 1.3, 1% difference. In the first 2 years, no difference at all. If your CD4-CD8 ratio, which is a proxy for immune dysfunction, if it's very dysfunctional, is 6 over 0.5, that's 12-fold, big difference. But it is normal, it's 2.2 versus 1.6. Almost no difference, same thing, no difference between the 18 months. If your viral load is below 3,000, not because you chose 3,000, remember, 25%, these are quartiles, 25% had below 3,000. If the viral load is low, no difference at all for 3 years. And if you have the 3 things, you're young, low viral load, your immune function is okay, no difference at all in 3 years. There's 174 persons here. Just 1 case of tuberculosis. And if you're over 50, high viral load and immune dysfunctional, the difference is enormous. 25% versus 0. So are you surprised that probability of disease progression is extremely variable and dependent on age, immune status, and viral load? We already knew that. We always knew that there's an enormous difference in disease progression in HIV. That's from the beginning. From the 90s, we knew that. If you're young, you don't progress very much. You're old, you progress faster. If you're low CD4, high CD4, we knew that. There's nothing new there. But then we looked at social benefit, and that's in 1990. And we started a trial. Mike and I were not directly involved. Mike, remember, we're both in the French NRS Scientific Advisory Board, Scientific Advisory Council, right? Conseil Scientifique de la NRS. And we approved this trial that was supposed to look at if you treat the whole community, what would happen to incidence. So what they did was randomize communities. So this area here in KwaZulu-Natal, in South Africa, if you treat a community and did not treat the other community, one community treated, the other just did whatever you do normally. But it's not just really treatment, because the community of treatment did much more than that. It went house to house, looking at everyone, testing everyone, and came back 6 months later. So it's much more than mass treatment. It's much more than that. But in the end of the trial, no difference at all in incidence. But as Mike knows, these are French people. We cannot trust the French, right? So if you don't trust the French, so you have to do, the US had to do their own trial. Because these are French, you cannot trust the French. So they did PopArt. PopArt was supposed to, now we're going to show them that's the way we do it. And it was presented now at Troy 2 months ago. So PopArt was a proper trial in which you compare the standard of care versus the full PopArt intervention and immediate treatment, regardless of whatever. They treated them. But the full, again, Zambia and South Africa, but instead of being KwaZulu-Natal, was in southern South Africa. But the full PopArt is not mass treatment, it's more than that. Door to door, again, HIV retesting, repeat visits. If someone is HIV positive in their house, they keep going to their house. So it's much more than just treating everyone. It's going to every house, returning to every house. If you're HIV positive, go there again. And unfortunately, no impact. Incidence remained the same as compared to Arm C, which is just do whatever you do in your life. So are you surprised that treatment as prevention did not impact incidence? Well, you shouldn't, because the whole idea of treatment as prevention started because of this paper by Julio Montaner. And now, as a Brazilian, say you should not trust not the French, but the Argentinians. Julio is Argentinian. He lives in Canada, has always lived in Canada, but he's Argentinian. And this paper was the one who set in motion the whole idea of treating everyone would end the HIV epidemic because of this. It's the data from British Columbia that shows that once you start, they start to treat everyone or increase treatment in British Columbia, the incidence of HIV dropped in an X curve. So one goes up, the other goes down. So if you treat, goes on. And they showed at that time the syphilis was going up. So it's not a matter of sexual behavior. But what they did not show, for reasons that only they can explain to you, is this one here. Only been shown there as a poster. If you how to say that? When you disaggregate the data from British Columbia, and don't look at the population, but look only at the gay men, because British Columbia, a lot of the incidence or the epidemic is amongst IV drug users, and they did a lot of things for IV drug users. If you only look at gay men, and because we cannot see very properly, marked 1999, which before here, 1999 is here, still going up. So you look at 1999, the incidence of the new case amongst gay men never ever changed in British Columbia. So it was not treatment who made the epidemic go down in British Columbia. And already knew that. If you looked in the UK, in the United Kingdom, which has reached 1990 long ago, these new cases amongst gay men in the UK those who acquired in the UK, outside the UK, kept going up and up and up independently of 1999. So it's nothing new. But we should, it says they should start the same day because the immediate HAART group in start. But what does immediate mean? If you go to the dictionary, I don't know which dictionary. I chose an American dictionary because they're Americans, but I prefer the Oxford dictionary. But you go to American dictionary, they say, Webster says that immediate means occurring, acting, or accomplished without loss or interval times. Immediately is something, now, immediately. No stop, no, you don't wait. But in start, the median time since HIV diagnosis and arriving to the trial was 1.1 years. Only 25% arrived at trial with less than 0.4, or with 3 months. Over 25% had more than 3 years since diagnosis when they arrived to the trial. And took another 6 weeks or 4 weeks to start treatment. So immediate in the start trial has nothing to do with immediate in real life. But then you have trial studies that said, oh no, but we can prove that in real life. So I had the same day Cascade trial, which is one of the most important trials used to prove that, which was published in JAMA last year. And it was conducted in Lesotho. Lesotho, if you don't know, is a very small country, about 100 persons in the middle of South Africa. And it's a trial that tried to do the same day HAART, antiretroviral therapy, as opposed to normal things. And what they showed in 6 months, that there's a 3-month linkage, is how many people were on treatment 3 months after diagnosis, a 25% difference. How many had in 12 months of virus suppression, 16% difference. That was meant to be a major difference. But if you look at it carefully, it's 50% versus 30-something%. So 50% is bad. But still, they say, oh, this proves it's much better. But now what they did with Cascade, this is the old what we saw before, if they went instead of 12 months into 24, no difference at all. At 2 years, no difference at all. But no, but we have the Haiti data. That's another big piece of data that WHO uses for same-day treatment. So the Haiti data, at 6 months after diagnosis, green versus blue, every year, if you start the same day, you're better, you have more people on treatment, on HAART, if you start the same day. But then, if you go to 12 months, which they showed now at TROI, 12 months, the best predictor, the longer it took for you to start treatment, the more likely you are to be on treatment at 6 months. So if you start 6 months later than the same day, you're twice as likely to be on treatment than you start the same day. Again, are you surprised because of that? That starting the same day is not as good as delaying your treatment. You shouldn't, because many years ago, Everett Koop, young people might not know him, he was a US Surgeon General, who said drugs don't work in people who don't take them, which is obvious, isn't it? If you don't take your drugs, they don't work. That's absolutely obvious. And we knew the opposite in HIV. If they take the drugs, they work, even if they start late. If they start late, they live. If they don't take their drugs, they won't live. And we knew for a while, a long time, that it doesn't matter where in the world, this from the IDEA collaboration, 41 countries, all the continents, 113 cohorts, over 300,000 patients. Doesn't matter where you are. Over 50% of patients are lost to follow-up in less than 3 years. So if you're lost to follow-up, you're not taking your drugs. If you're not on treatment, you're not taking your drugs. And what makes you take your drugs to adhere to treatment? The first thing is you've got to be on treatment. That's the very first thing. The second thing is things related to you and to your relationship to your physician, your healthcare provider, or the whole system. So there are predictors of adherence at the patient level. These are the most important ones. But some of them are patient-dependent, like the age, level of schooling, clinical stage, and family of support. The other are much more societal. But those who cannot change. But then the other is a healthcare system. And so I did, can you really change this when the patient comes to you? Can you change the age of the patient? So the younger the patient, less likely the patient is to adhere to treatment. If the patient is illiterate, a patient with a PhD is more likely to adhere to treatment than an uneducated patient. A patient who's ill is more likely to adhere to treatment than a patient who's feeling extremely well. A patient whose family supports him or her will adhere to treatment. A patient who comes from an evangelical family, that he cannot tell his parents that he's HIV positive or he's gay, will not take the drugs because he does not take the drugs at home. So, but these things you cannot change as a physician. But can you change the health system? So I did a quick Google search, right? Is it easier to fix the health, and there's a typo there, the health system than the human nature? Which one can you change easier, more easily? And surprisingly, there's nothing in Google for that. But there's something, I look at this, that there's a paper that thought that might be interesting. This paper here, this one here. And I looked at it, and it was something from the US Institute of Medicine, November 1999. And I look at it, when I looked at it, and they looked why health systems fail. And so obvious. We knew that since at least 1999. One, inadequate monitoring or follow-up of treatment, failure of communication, and system failure. So we knew that the system does not work. It's not the human being. The human being is the human being. It will always be. Here in Africa, in the US, even in France, there'll be human beings. So it's the system. That's why people are lost to follow-up. So in conclusion, what I said before, everyone should be treated, has the right to be treated. Eventually, everyone will need to be treated, except for the rare, debatable person with elite controller with no inflammation. And remember that starting antiretroviral therapy is rarely an emergency. But the predictors of loss to follow-up, i.e. the predictors of not being on treatment, are exactly the same predictors of the persons who are very low risk of progression, and the predictors of not taking the drugs, with or without treatment. So someone who's young, asymptomatic, is someone who doesn't need the treatment immediately, so has very little risk of progressing, with or without treatment, has very high risk of being lost to follow-up, or worse, not taking the drug properly and transmitting resistant viruses. That's why you have 20% of primary resistance to efavirenz. Remember, the time scale of HIV infection is measured in years, not days or weeks. It's no emergency. And non-adherent patients, if the patient does not take the drugs properly, that person is at risk of transmitting resistant viruses to other people, which is a very important problem. That's why efavirenz is no longer, one of the reasons efavirenz is no longer the drug of choice. In Brazil, here in São Paulo, it's about 15% or 20% primary resistance. Why? Because people are not taking the drugs properly. Because these were young people who probably, many of them, could have waited a little bit to understand why they're taking the drugs. So to my mind, what you need first is to develop models of care that are client-centered, that simplify and adapt HIV service across the cascade of care to reflect the preferences and expectations of various groups of people living with HIV, while reducing unnecessary burdens of health systems. It is of paramount importance to allow for decades of sustained virus suppression. That's what you need. Because we need to remember that treatment is not a sprint. It's not something, it's not 100 meters, 200 meters sprint. It takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds. It's a marathon. It's something, someone who's 20 is going to take a treatment. He's going to take treatment for 50, 60, 70 years. So it's not 1990, it's 90 for 90 years. So there's a fourth 90 there. And we've got to go back to what the HHS guidelines always said from the beginning. You all said, the most important thing you should start treatment is the patient is willing and able to commit. So how can someone who just learned his HIV, or he or she is HIV positive, just learned, you do a blood test, you're HIV positive, take these pills every day for the rest of your life? how can you be able and willing to commit to a treatment? How can you know what you're doing? So I want to thank people who actually either provided their slides or people who stole their slides. I don't know exactly which the difference. Some of them stole. I stole, someone gave me the slides. So thank them for the slides. And obrigado para todo mundo.
Pessoal, a gente tem uns minutos ainda. O Dr. Mauro pode responder algumas questões. Por enquanto, nós não recebemos ainda aqui no aplicativo. Então, seriam mais ou enviarem ainda ou questões abertas.
Try again?
Yeah.
Good. So that was good even in English. So the idea of how do you reach the people who are most difficult, who are the people who are either known to be unreliable in terms of their treatment, don't access medical care, are likely to be transmitting and responsible in part for the persistence of the epidemic. Do you have any, you talk about individualization, fine, but how do you reach the people who are the most difficult, and what sort of changes should a clinic or a society or what should we be doing if we can't succeed by offering early care?
This is an extremely difficult question. I mean, I'm not a public health official, but there are very good examples of, first one in South Africa, in which they devised clinics for adolescents, in which they asked the adolescents to actually, they were the ones who designed the clinic. They decided everything. And they did it, they made the clinic, actually, they built the clinic exactly how the adolescents designed it, literally. And they say, as a joke, but as reality, the only thing they did not give or get for the adolescents was Beyoncé as the secretary, as a receptionist. For sure. They wanted Beyoncé to be the receptionist. That they couldn't get. But the rest is exactly what they wanted. Even if it did not make sense as architectonically. So the room is their clinic. They run it. They get exceptional adherence. The other thing is the same issue of New England Journal of Medicine, in which START came out. There was a Temprano trial, which you probably remember. Temprano trial was a trial that people started HIV treatment with CD4 counts high as well in Africa, up to 800, asymptomatic. And people were randomized to 4 arms. Early treatment plus IPT is analyzed either as primary prevention of tuberculosis or a combination of this. And what they showed is that IPT, INH as primary prophylaxis, was almost as good as antiretroviral therapy to prevent death or anything. And we in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, we've shown that many years ago. Bill Papa had shown that in Haiti many years ago as well. So one thing you could do, someone comes to your clinic, just found out the person is HIV positive. Instead of giving antiretrovirals, you are in Africa, you give that person INH plus $10 a month. For that person to come back to your clinic every month. So for 6 months or 9 months, depending on how long you're doing your NH prophylaxis, you're coaching that person. That person is learning how to come to health systems, getting familiar with the health system, understanding what make a difference. It's a lifelong treatment. 9 months, and you know that primary NH prophylaxis is almost as good as HIV treatment in terms of prevention of badness. That's what Temprano showed. Preventing, because badness that happens there is TB. That's is doable. Because imagine you are a 19-year-old boy living in a village in Africa. Or you can do the same in Brazil, but you're living in a village in Africa. You have to walk several kilometers to get your pills on a Saturday. You're feeling good. You're feeling well. You pretend to understand what a virus is. We all pretend we understand what a virus is. We don't really understand what a virus is. And then we ask a totally illiterate person in Africa to say, oh, you have a virus, which we don't understand what it is, that in several years' time will cause you something, and you take this pill daily, because that will prevent you from having something many years' time, and you take the pill because you prevent it from spreading to someone else who has something many years' time. And then there's a Saturday in which everyone's going to play football, soccer for you. You're going to play football. And you say, oh, no, I'm not going to play football with you because I'm going to walk the whole day to get a pill to treat a virus, what the hell is a virus? We don't understand what a virus is. Why would the guy understand? You just not walk 10 miles or 10 kilometers to get the pill. It's totally fine. It's an 18, 19-year-old boy who's totally fine. I play football. Wouldn't you play football? Everyone do. That's only human. As I said, you cannot change human nature. Then the boy will play football. You have to change the system. The system has to find ways to do that. And as Jupp Long, whom you knew quite well as I did, as Jupp Long said, if Coca-Cola can get Coca-Cola bottles everywhere, we can get antiretrovirals everywhere.
Mais alguma pergunta? Temos aí um tempinho.
Obrigado pela palestra. Eu queria perguntar... desculpa, meu inglês não é bom, então...
Não, meu português é bom.
Eu queria perguntar assim, é um pouco menos científico, mas você acha que, por exemplo, nós da comunidade acadêmica somos relativamente fechados nos nossos antros de conhecimento, né? Universidades e laboratórios. Você acha que se nós criássemos, por exemplo, um grupo de figuras públicas, um médico que representasse o desenvolvimento da cura da AIDS, ou o tratamento da AIDS, ou outras doenças até, e essa pessoa tivesse um contato mais constante com mídias, tivesse comerciais passando na TV, você acha que isso traria uma maior constância para o tratamento ou maior taxa de sucesso?
Eu acho que sim. Sim, mas tem que ir um pouco mais adiante. Uma parte é voltando à Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola tem anúncio o tempo todo. Você não anda na rua sem ver um cartaz de Coca-Cola. Porque se não tiver cartaz, você vai tomar Pepsi-Cola, vai tomar outra coisa. Então tem que ter propaganda constante. E uma coisa que o Esper, que conhece bem melhor do que o Drauzio aprendeu nos anos 80, não adianta falar, a história que o Drauzio conta, que eu adoro, que ele foi dar uma palestra, logo, lembra, você vai lembrar dessa palestra, ele foi falar para operários, comecei nos anos 80, sobre HIV, ele deu uma palestra ótima, achou que todo mundo adorou a palestra, e no fim um operário levantou a mão e disse, doutor, adorei essa palestra, mas o que é esse tal de externa? Era esperma. Então não adianta um doutor ir falar bonito. Tem que alguém que vai lá e fala porra, gala, a palavra que as pessoas usam. Quer dizer, tem importância a gente estar na televisão falando o português bonito que a gente sabe falar. Mas tem que ter uma questão de educação por pares. Tem que ter uma coisa que o Drauzio começou a fazer na prisão, anos atrás, e fazer muito bem feito. Tem que ter isso. Quer dizer, eu acho que vocês, a juventude, são vocês que têm que falar. Se vocês leram, da juventude até 25 anos, homossexual, masculina, nos últimos 10 anos aumentou 7 vezes o índice de infecção. Quem fala a língua da juventude até 25 anos são vocês, não sou eu. Eu posso na televisão, a ESP na televisão, falar bonito do jeito que a gente pode falar. Mas quem tem que falar são vocês. Se vocês têm que entender e vocês falarem.
Chegou uma questão aqui no aplicativo, eu vou ler, daí se tiver mais alguém para falar. A questão é o seguinte, acredito que o grande desafio para a adesão está no acolhimento na consulta inicial. Uma das grandes dificuldades relatadas pelos pacientes é ser atendido em um lugar que trate exclusivamente de pessoas que vivem com HIV/AIDS. Gostaria de saber da opinião do palestrante.
Eu concordo inteiramente, mas eu acho que não tinha que ser um lugar que trata inteiramente de HIV/AIDS, não. Isso, eu tenho um cara, que é o meu ídolo atual, chama Dimitri Deskalakis, que é o chefe do programa de AIDS de Nova York. O Dimitri, ele mudou a epidemia de Nova York. Quem for a Nova York, entrar no metrô, vai ver um cara sem camisa, careca, forte, com 2 brincos, fazendo assim. Na mão dele, no braço está escrito "Don't fuck with my shit". Esse é o cara que é o chefe do programa de AIDS de Nova York. E ele está fazendo assim, e dizendo, se você não pode falar com o seu médico sobre sexo, drogas e álcool, demita seu médico. E ele criou um sistema em que o sistema de saúde tem que acolher qualquer um. Se você chegou lá, porque você tem um risco de alguma coisa infecciosa, ou DST, o produto final, ele faz um desenho que se você é HIV positivo, o produto final é você estar HIV viral indetectável. Se você é HIV negativo, o produto final é você continuar HIV negativo. Então, o sistema tem que te acolher muito bem, independentemente de quem você seja. Então, o acolhimento tem que ser geral e muito bom. Então, ele criou um sistema que acolhe qualquer um muito bem, que você não se sinta discriminado. Então, isso é difícil. Nosso sistema de saúde é muito ruim, acolhe todo mundo muito mal. E como fazer isso? Eu acho que o sistema... ontem eu estava conversando com um colega que a nossa população está envelhecendo, a grande epidemia, mais que HIV, é a epidemia de velhice. Nosso sistema de saúde não tem você não tem escada para chegar no posto de saúde, no centro de saúde, não tem elevador, não tem rampa.
Bom dia, doutor Mauro. Seguinte, fui eu que coloquei essa pergunta porque eu tenho a possibilidade de... Esse é um problema que eu detecto desde que eu morava em São Paulo. Eu já atuo em Belém do Pará, né? E a gente teve a ousadia de colocar no hospital escola, atende um ambulatório de infectologia que atende a todo mundo no mesmo ambiente, né? E nós fizemos alguns trabalhos de pesquisa, um está no prelo agora para publicação, que é a questão causas da não adesão. E é que aparece, em primeiro lugar, em 3 instituições diferentes, 2 que tratam exclusivamente para as pessoas que vivem com HIV, e a nossa, que não trata exclusivamente de pessoas que vivem com HIV, colocaram esse ponto como principal, 98%. Né? Então, gostariam de ser atendidos em serviços gerais. Né? É um desafio absurdo, porque existe toda uma particularidade, mas o que eu coloco sempre é assim, eu acho que todo mundo deveria ter esse acolhimento que a gente coloca do paciente com HIV e que todos os portadores de doenças infecciosas ou não crônicas tivessem acesso à mesma informação que a gente busca dar para um paciente de HIV na primeira consulta. Né? Então, o que eu gostaria muito era de tentar tirar um pouquinho essa causa de não adesão, né? De batalhar por serviços onde as pessoas que vivem com HIV fossem atendidas como qualquer outro paciente, e que qualquer outro paciente fosse atendido tão bem quanto a gente gostaria que fosse atendido os pacientes que vivem com HIV. Então, foi por isso que eu coloquei esse questionamento.
Meu sonho é maior, ainda mais utópico mesmo, a coisa que eu queria fazer, tinha um projeto, mas provavelmente nunca vou fazer, é ter uma clínica verdadeiramente de saúde sexual, que é o nome mesmo. Sim. Em que tivesse desde gravidez, clínica de fertilidade, até disfunção erétil. Quer dizer, qualquer pessoa que está lá tem alguma coisa a ver com sexualidade. Pode ser o casal jovem ou não jovem que quer engravidar, o senhor com disfunção erétil, a pessoa que foi tratada de sífilis, outro foi tratada de gonorreia, ou tem HIV, ou tem qualquer coisa. Quem está naquela sala de espera está lá porque tem alguma coisa a ver com saúde sexual. Na verdade, vocês conhecem, devem conhecer o Ricardo Dias, a gente está abrindo agora uma clínica popular no Rio, cujo nome é Vida, Bem-Estar e Saúde Sexual. É a clínica popular. O começo é isso. Não vai chegar a ter essa amplitude toda, mas é o começo disso. O nome é Vibes, com 2 S, mas o começo é isso, é Vida, Bem-Estar e Saúde Sexual. A ideia é essa, chegar lá. Não vai chegar porque a gente não tem grana, nem tempo, mas a ideia é chegar lá.
Mais alguma última pergunta? Senão a gente... Acho que é melhor. Então, pessoal, mais uma vez, obrigado, Mauro, parabéns pela palestra e continuamos.